What's happening, guys, and welcome to Sunday Night Live. This is my post-fight thoughts to Josh Warrington's shocking defeat last night to Maurizio Lara, man. I did a post-fight video about it straight after the fight, and I thought, let me just go live, because normally I do go live directly after the fight, but I didn't yesterday, so I thought, let me just go live now on Sunday, as we do, and you know how it works, guys. For those of you that are regularly here, I'll just give my thoughts and opinions. You guys just drop your comments, and I'll reply to every comment that you guys have got. So let's talk about it, man. Like last night, wow. I mean, I'm still in shock. I'm actually still in shock over last night because I did not expect that at all. For those of you that tuned into the podcast on Thursday, like, you know, when we were talking about this fight, previewing it, myself and Laurie from AFTV, we were literally just like, you know, this fight here, we were just kind of looking onto other fights. We were looking onto like the other fights for Josh Warrington. He obviously vacated the IBF belt not long before this particular fight. And the reason why was because he was in pursuit of other fights. You know, he was in pursuit of a Gary Russell Jr. He was in pursuit of like a Kanzu and others. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, now, you know, it's like back to square one for Josh Warrington now. He suffered the first defeat of his career. He was knocked down for the first time in his career. He was knocked down in the fourth round. And yeah, in the ninth round, it was over. But it was just unbelievable to watch, man. I mean, in the first round, like thinking about it now, when I was watching it from the first round, Josh Warrington didn't seem quite like himself. And I know that with him, you know, he kind of buzzes off the crowd, like the Leeds passionate crowd. He has them all there and they're all like, you know, right behind him. And I just thought to myself, yeah, like he just doesn't seem like he's with it. But then you think about, you know, the crowd's not there. He hasn't been in a ring for over a year. Of course, like he's not going to be actually himself. Do you know what I mean? It might take a couple of rounds to get into it. But, you know, the closer we actually got to the fight, the more it seemed like, you know, people were starting to think, hold on, this Lara guy, he can bang. Like, you know, we all know what Mexicans are like. They come to fight. And, like, so it proved. I mean, like I said, the first round was a bit of a shaky one. And then, like, from then on, it was just really Lara. I mean, he took most of the rounds, particularly the fourth and then the ninth. But it was just an unbelievable upset, man. And, you know, this is why we love boxing. This is why we love it. Because, like I said, before the fight, myself and Laurie, we were just like, kind of looking onto other fights. And I don't normally do that. I don't normally pay that much. I wouldn't say disrespect, but or overlooking. But we did kind of think that, you know, this fight is kind of formality for Josh Warrington. I mean, he's been one of our most improved fighters over the years here in the UK. He's never been down in his career, I don't believe, until last night. And, like, you know, he still had a lot to gain. I mean, he still had a lot to go for it. Like, he was looking for the big fight. So I was thinking surely he wouldn't be overlooking this guy against somebody that we don't even really know much about. You know, Lara, before last night, had never mixed in anything like the level of a Josh Warrington. So, yeah, I guess that was the reason why, like, we just couldn't really see that sort of an upset. But this is why we love boxing, man. And got comments already. Big up to Conrad Boxing here. He's dropped a comment. He's put, what a fight night. I was starving for boxing and this card delivered. Yeah, absolutely, man. This card really did deliver. I mean, it was a fantastic card. And for those of you that are in the chat, feel free to hit the like button, share the video, and let's get it out there for as many people to see, man. Anyone want to add comments, let me know. I happily respond to them, and we'll carry on, yeah. Conrad also put Wood versus Mold was brilliant too. Yeah, great ending to that fight. Do you know what I mean? It was a good card, man. And you know what? Going into this actual card, I was thinking, like, I'll watch it, but I'm more excited for next week. I mean, next week we've got like Broner's returning. We've got Otto Wallin against Dominic Brazil on that card as well. We've got Josh Kelly and David Avanesian finally getting it on. So, you know, I was more looking forward to next week. But I'll tell you what, next week's cards have got a lot to do to top last week, like this weekend. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, fantastic night of boxing, man. But back to Josh Warrington, you know, like after the fourth round, you know, he got dropped very heavily. Lara was like clubbing some big hooks in there. And, like, you know, there was a lot of like people thinking maybe this fight should be stopped now. But, you know, I can't at the time. I mean, I know a lot of people are saying it now, but at the time I was thinking like that the referee might have done the right thing to let him keep going because, you know, they knew that Josh Warrington was undefeated. He's not going to just want to go out just like that. You know, he's going to try and fight till the end. But I totally understand for those people that do think that, you know, the referee should have stopped it then and there. Thinking about it now, yeah, I can see that. At the time, I was just like, oh, Josh Warrington's got a hold on here. he's literally surviving by the skin of his teeth. But like he did, yeah. And I know that there were some people that thought the fight should have been stopped earlier. Let's go to some more comments here. Big up to Castle View Promotions, Retro 70s, 80s. He's put, it proves what the general thinking, that the UK fighters don't mix well or do well with Americans and with South Americans, not on the same level. Well, you know what? Recently, that's looked like the case. Do you know what I mean? Josh Warrington's one of our top fighters. Like, he was like the UK pound for pound. Like, he was up there. Do you know what I mean? I mean, he's defeated Lee Selby, he defeated Carl Frampton, he defeated Kid Galahad. You know, Josh Warrington he's our number one. They were number one featherweight in the world at the time. Do you know what I mean? And this guy Maurizio Lara, unknown quantity from Mexico, didn't know much about him, hadn't mixed in anything like the competition, like against Josh Warrington, and he came over there and dropped him and stopped him. Do you know what I mean? So that's going to be the last time I'm going to underestimate a Mexican fighter coming over here. That's the last time I'm doing it, because I admit I overlooked this fight. I was literally thinking, like, I put a tweet out the same day, and it was like, who do you guys think Josh Warrington should fight next? Should he beat Lara? Do you know what I mean? So I'm not going to do that again. I'm not doing that again. Big up Michael here in the chat, W Michael 83. He's put everything that Lara was a Mexican road sweeper. Yeah, everyone thought that, man. Everyone thought that he was like just some guy to collect a paycheck. But closer to the fight, people were starting to say, like, you know, Lara, he looks like he can bang. He's coming here, he's ambitious. Maybe we shouldn't overlook this guy. I think closer to the fight, there were a few murmurs within that fight camp that, you know, this Lara guy is not come to collect a check. Do you know what I mean? He's coming to win. And so it proved, man. I mean, he was swinging in some of those rounds. And, like, his eye did get bad after the fourth round, like fifth round, his eye started to swell up a bit. So I was thinking, like, okay, maybe Josh Warrington, he survived the worst. Maybe he can now, like, really try and pull it on Lara and target that eye, because the eye was getting quite bad. But it didn't matter, man. After the fourth, it just seemed that Josh Warrington just wasn't there. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, it was a shocking upset, man. Shocking upset. That's a contender for upset of the year already, and we're only in February. So big up IA in the chat here. He's put, Hearns' matchmaking is poor, cannot guide a career for you know what. And it's interesting you bring that up, IA, because I was speaking to my cousin earlier today, and he was talking about Eddie Hearns' matchmaking as well. He was like, compared to Frank Warren, you know, Eddie Hearn cannot guide a career like Frank Warren does. I mean, there are some fighters, you know, like he's guided to world champions, like Anthony Joshua, for example. But a lot of people point to the Andy Ruiz fight and say that was poor matchmaking. But, you know, when you look at it really in hindsight, they didn't really make that fight. It was against Jarrell Miller he was supposed to fight. And then obviously we know what happened there. But, like, I've heard this from others as well. I've heard people say that, you know, Eddie Hearn's matchmaking is not the best. And he has said, Eddie Hearn, in the past, that I'm just trying to give these guys, you know, we need to give value for money for the fans. We need to, you know, provide fans with the tough fights. And, like, if a fight is good enough, then he'll pass the test. I remember Eddie Hearn saying something like that. So for me, I just think he's got so many fighters on his roster. He's got so many fighters that he looks after that he probably can't afford to just guide their career for too long against soft touches or really build from scratch and take his time with fighters, because he's got so much people on the roster. Whereas I think Frank's got more time to guide them. But then when you look at Frank Warren, I mean, it hasn't always worked out for him either. Look at Anthony Yard, for example. I mean, he was guiding his career very, very carefully. And then, you know, he jumped in the ring against Kovalev and he wasn't ready. And then after that, he had another fight, and then he fought Lyndon Arthur and he lost that. So you could look at Daniel Dubois as well. So, yeah, it's hard to find a balance between the two. I mean, where do you balance it? I mean, Frank Warren has got a history of matchmaking, doing very well with his fighters in terms of, like, bringing them to world champions. But then you've got some people consider Frank Warren to be too slow with the way how he guides his fighters. But then some people consider Eddie Hearn to be too quick. So I guess you kind of got to, like, I don't know, kind of balance it, I suppose. But very interesting, man. Very interesting. And I'm going to talk about that more actually on the podcast on Thursday with Laurie about, you know, Eddie Hearn's matchmaking and do you think it's bad or not? So big up Michael again here. He's put, where does Warrington go from here? Well, I saw that, you know, he released a statement. I haven't really got to read, I haven't managed to read it all yet. I think the statement only came out just before I went on live, but I did see that he's put one out. Obviously, I'm sure he's just going to say that he's reflecting on what happened last night. You know, it was a bad loss for him, but, you know, Josh Warrington's not done by any means. I mean, like, it's the first loss of his career. and it was a bad loss. I do have to say that it was a bad stoppage. So you know, the talks of him going up against like the likes of a Gary Russell Jr. or Kanzu or anyone like that, I guess that's going to be on hold for now. But he's going to want to get back in the ring. I mean, he's been out the ring for quite a long time up until last night, and he won't want to have another long layoff. I'm sure he'll just want to get back in there and get back to where he was before he can start pursuing the big fights again. He gave up the title, obviously, before this particular fight. But yeah, I wonder where he's going to be positioned now. I mean, I haven't looked at the rankings or anything like that. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what move he does take next, because it's similar to like Daniel Dubois. I mean, he suffered a bad defeat, and maybe they're going to have to guide him in a like, be careful with him. But with Warrington, I mean, he's a bit older. He's going to want to get back up there soon. But I wouldn't rush him, because that was a bad defeat that he suffered. And, you know, I guess we'll see what Eddie Hearns' matchmaking is like now. So let's see what happens there. But for me, he's definitely not done. Josh Warrington, he can go on to pick up another world title. I mean, he is a quality fighter, one of our most improved fighters over the years. And I still rate him. I still have high hopes for Josh Warrington, man. But yeah, I mean, he was really decked by this Maurizio Lara guy. And Eddie Hearn did say after the fight that they were going to invoke the rematch clause. So maybe they will jump straight into it. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think that's a good idea if they do jump straight into that rematch? But it's looking like that could be a possibility as well. Big up Annie Foki in the chat here. What's going on, man? He's put, just how good is Lara? Is this a largely unknown quantity emerging onto world level? Yeah, it was. Like, I'm being real with you. Before this fight here, I didn't know anything about Lara. And if I said I did, then I'll be lying, because on the podcast and, you know, in my preview before this fight, I didn't know much about him. He was an unknown quantity for me. Hadn't fought anybody on his resume that I thought that, you know, was anything like the sort of level of a Josh Warrington. And he's had a couple of defeats previously. He's still a young kid. He's only 22 years old. So, yeah, I didn't know much about him at all. But to be fair, man, he was hungry. He was ambitious. And I overlooked him. You know, people overlook this guy, and he came and he did what he had to do. So nothing but respect to him, man. I ain't going to be overlooking anyone like that again. I'll tell you that. So big up for the comment, bro. Let's go to some more comments here. W Michael 83's put, do we want to see a rematch? It was a convincing defeat. Josh Warrington, he strikes me as the kind of guy that will want to go right back in there and avenge that defeat. I mean, look at the way AJ lost to Andy Ruiz. He invoked that rematch clause and he got a battering. So, you know, I'm sure that Josh Warrington will want to go in for the rematch. And Conrad Boxing has put here, Hearn apparently put a rematch clause in that contract. Yeah, Hearn's the master for that, putting rematch clauses in the contracts. And yeah, I think he will. I think he will take it now. Yeah, I don't think that because how old is Josh Warrington? I'm sure he's like late 20s, early 30s. So, you know, in the lower divisions around that age, you're going to want to push on. And this is a setback for him. And I'm sure he's going to want to go straight back in the rematch with Lara. The rematch clause has been invoked. Eddie Hearn did say in the post-fight interview that there was a rematch clause. So, yeah, I think there will be a rematch now when I think about it more. IA's put here, McCracken wanted AJ to fight Char instead of Ruiz, but the zone's Mexican scribers led to Ruiz. Yeah, and look how that ended up. Do you know what I mean? Those of us that followed the sport closely knew that Ruiz was a lot better than he was letting off. I remember at the time when AJ was supposed to fight Jerome Miller and then that got cancelled, everybody was like, oh, who's this guy, man? He's fat. This guy ain't going to be able to do nothing to AJ. And, you know, I and many other people were like, you know, that this guy, he might not look the part, but he can be dangerous. And then I didn't go as far as thinking that he'd win, but I did think he might be dangerous. And, you know, we saw what happened there. So, yeah. I guess that's another case of bad matchmaking, man. But I have to be real. I thought that AJ would win that fight too. So it's just hard to balance it. You know what I mean? Because if Eddie Hearn matched these guys in too lightly, we'd be criticizing him, saying that these fights are boring, that, you know, like we need to see them step up and this is not good to watch. But then if he puts them in too deep, then we say the opposite. So it's all about finding a balance, man. And sometimes it can work for you. Sometimes it just doesn't work for you. And last night for Josh Warrington, it didn't work for him at all, man. Big up Mohammed in the chat here. He's put, it reminds me a bit of the AJ versus Ruiz fight, because when AJ went trade for trade with Ruiz, he lost. But when he boxed him technically in the second fight, AJ won. Josh should box him technically. I think Josh Warrington did say that, actually. I think he did say that he made the mistake of trading, and he will box better next time. And Muhammad's put here, not go trade for trade like the first one. Yeah, I think maybe that will be something that he'll look into, because it wouldn't be wise to go into the rematch with Maurizio Lara and try and bang him again, because we saw what happened there. Maurizio Lara, he's not like, don't have the best fundamentals in the world, but he's got very, very heavy hands, as we saw yesterday. So, I think it'll have to be a different game plan for Josh Warrington, but he can get drawn into a fight. I mean, how disciplined could Josh Warrington be over 12 rounds? He can get drawn in. He likes to swing. And I'm not saying he can't box, but he can get drawn into a fight, man. So that will be dangerous for him. And I think the rematch will be actually, if there's a crowd at the rematch, then that fight will be unbelievable, man. Will be interesting to see where they put that. I'm sure that they're going to try and put that on the leads if we are allowed crowds back in by the time they do get back in the ring, because it'll be more money for Lara, I suppose, but he'll be at a disadvantage because it's Josh Warrington's hometown. So yeah, let's see where it goes with that. Big up my guy Jamie Payne in the chat here. He's put, Zelfa Barrett was matched all wrong last night too. Gobsmacked with the Warrington fight. He looked terrible from the opening bell. Yeah, let's talk about the Zelfa Barrett fight, man. You know what? Again, I got it wrong again. And listen, we all get it wrong sometimes. But on the podcast last week, I was literally like, Kiko Martinez, he's literally been around the block and back and around the block again. Do you know what I mean? He's 34 years old. He's mixed in with like nearly pretty much everybody, and I thought that this would be, a showcase fight for Zelfa Barrett to really kind of put himself out there and have a good win over a well-known opponent such as Kiko Martinez. And the way how the fight played out, man, I mean, there's a lot of people that thought that Zelfa Barrett was lucky with that decision. And then let's go on to the scorecards. I mean, the scorecards were absolutely ridiculous. Let me just say that. I literally couldn't believe the scorecards, man. Well, I could believe it because we've seen this before in the UK for sure. And what's sad about it is none of us was shocked. I was on Twitter last night tweeting while watching the fights, and people were just saying if this goes to points, they're probably going to screw over Martinez. Now, I don't think it was a actual robbery in terms of the result. I think that the fight was close enough for it to go either way. Whether you thought Kiko Martinez did enough to win or whether you thought Zelfa Barrett nicked it, Zelfa Barrett took the later rounds, most of them, and Kiko Martinez was dominating the earlier rounds. So, I think that the shift did change, but it just left a sour taste in everybody's mouth just looking at the scorecards, man. 118, 111. When I saw that, I just thought, okay, if anything, they're going to give that to Martinez. Surely they can't give that to Barrett. Do you know what I mean? Because Martinez won those early rounds clearly. And then Barrett, it was give or take really in those last rounds. But some of those rounds I did give to Barrett, to be fair. But if you made a strong argument for Martinez, I'm sure not many people would have argued. But when I heard it was 118, 111, I thought, okay, it's going to go to Martinez. And then it literally went to Barrett. And I was just like, wow, man, these judges, we need some serious reform. They are, man. They really are. And I'm glad that Eddie Hearn called them out at the end. I'm glad that he, what he said in his interview about the judges and how it needs to be sorted. But it's all good talking about it, Eddie Hearn. We want to see some action. We want to see you write to the British Boxing Board of Control or get something going where they tend to look into this, like what actually made the judge score this fight as it was. I mean, we saw the same thing with Terry O'Connor when Lewis Ritson fought. When Lewis Ritson got that decision and they interviewed one of the members from the British Boxing Board of Control. And that interview that he had, he literally just dismissed everything. He didn't even want to hear anything about what the fans had to say or any criticisms. All he could say was literally, I'm not going to pay attention to what a few fans that drink a couple of beers think. Do you know what I mean? That's what the British Boxing Board of Control guy did. So, I expect the same thing. I'm not going to take it seriously as to what we think about scorecards, even though we could all see, that was terrible scoring. And whether you thought you won the fight or not, that was terrible scoring, man. And as for the matchmaking, it didn't end up right for him. Do you know what I mean? It didn't end up right. I mean, he would have learned a lot in that fight. Let's just say that. And maybe in his career going forward, I mean, it'll make him a better fighter. But I think going life and death with Kiko Martinez at this stage, probably not a good look for Zelfa Barrett, man, because a lot of people were thinking that he was going to win that fight and look good doing it. And he didn't. Do you know what I mean? So I think he's got a long way to go to get to where he wants to be. European level might be a step too far for him right now, but let's just see what happens, man. Big up Conrad Boxing here. He's put, agreed, Mohammed, Why did he go toe-to-toe with the guy who can bang but has zero footwork? Yeah, absolutely. Michael Wilson here has put, something was not right with Warrington from the start. After the first knockdown, his legs were gone, but credit to Lara. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people were saying that, and I was saying it too, Michael, to be fair, but I didn't want to take too much away from Lara, like you're saying. You're saying credit to Lara as well. But something just wasn't, he just didn't look right, Josh Warrington. I don't know if it was the inactivity. I don't know whether it was the fact that he's didn't have the crowd behind him, but he just didn't look right from the opening bell, man. And, you know, he just didn't see that intensity there. And it just wasn't there. Do you know what I mean? And then in the fourth round, I mean, whoa, the way how he got dropped, man, it could have been stopped. And those last 5 seconds in that round felt like it was going forever, man. I was just like, when's the bell going to go? Literally, Warrington was like holding on like for his life, and he literally made it to the end of that round. And then, yeah, he was able to carry on, which has been the subject of some debate I've seen. I mean, I've seen quite a few people come out and say that the fight should have been stopped then. Johnny Nelson, after the fight, was, you know, he was a pundit on Sky, as he always is, and he was saying that the fight should have been stopped. Adam Booth was saying it as well. And then when I was on Twitter, a lot of people, others were saying it as well. So I don't know. At the time, I wasn't really outraged at the fact that Warrington was allowed to carry on. That's just my honest opinion. But I guess it's down to what you think. When I think about it now, maybe the referee should have stopped it. But, you know, it's hindsight, isn't it? So big up Michael again in the chat here. He's put, Warrington might even retire. He's achieved a lot. If he did, I'd be surprised. I think he'll definitely go for the rematch, especially the fact that there was no crowd there. I think that he'll want to put on something for his lead supporters. And, you know, if he loses against Lara in the rematch, then I think, yeah, he could consider retirement then. Michael's also put here, Barrett is massively overrated. He doesn't do anything particularly well. You know what? I was a bit disappointed, man. I thought that Zelfa Barrett, you know, let's be honest, in the last fight, before this one here against Kiko Martinez, he was down on the cards before he put that excellent left hook to finish the fight. Do you know what I mean? And in this fight here, he didn't look very impressive either. He couldn't put a dent in Martinez, who just literally came forward the whole fight. And yeah, I expected more. I thought that I think he's got good foot movement. I think he moves around the ring well. He did impress me when he fought Leon Woodstock as Zelfa Barrett. He did impress me in that fight. But I think there's more to come from him, man. And he's 27 years old. So I'm sure he's going to want to get a move on if he wants to go on to the next level. But right now, I just think that, you know, we need to see more from him, because that fight against Kiko Martinez showed that he's not at the level that he wants to be. He's definitely not there yet, because Martinez, as we know, he's been around the block and back again. Do you know what I mean? He's definitely nowhere near his prime. And Zelfa Barrett was supposed to win in impressive fashion last night, and he couldn't do it. So a lot of people thought he lost it. So, yeah, I think he's got a lot to do to prove to everybody that, you know, he is at the level that he wants to be. But right now, I'll be very cautious with matching him, for sure. Michael's put here, these judges need to pick a different sport. Yeah, for sure, man. Mohammed's put, big fights should take action and stop fight. I think he means big fighters. So big fighters, or no, big fights actually, sorry. Big fights should take action and stop fighting in the UK. It'll be tough for the UK fans, but it has to be done if we want something to be done about it. And then he's put fighters, yeah. So, listen, I'm glad Eddie Hearn acknowledged it. That's all I'm saying. I'm glad he acknowledged it and said, you know, what he said, because it was ridiculous. And we've seen this how many times? This ain't a new thing. And it's getting quite embarrassing, you know what I mean? Like, I've got, like, fight fans over in America that I talk to and overseas, and, like, they're just like, yo, what's happening at the UK, man? This is becoming a regular thing. Like, away fighters are coming to the UK and, like, they're getting a hard ride. Do you know what I mean? And I can't even argue it. I can't even argue the point, because it's true. It's true, man. Last night, I was just like, come on, man. Like, Martinez, you only gave him 2 rounds in that fight. And it wasn't just one judge. It was 2 judges as well. So it is, yeah, something does need to be done, man. But what is going to be done? That's the thing. I don't know if anything's... I mean, Eddie Hearn is all good coming out and saying that speech that he did. But we're going to see it again. We're going to see it again. And we're probably going to see it next week. That's the funny thing about it. Conrad Boxing put here, UK judges are ridiculous. Yeah, they are, man. And he's put ruining at least one fight on every card, literally. And, like, again, next week, we've got Josh Kelly against David Avanesian, and then we've got an undercard there as well. I mean, what's the odds on one of the judges messing up on that as well? Do you know what I mean? And if this was happening in another country, we'd be quick to call it out. So I'm glad to see that we're all kind of united here. and against what's going on, even though it is happening in the UK. I'm glad that we're calling it out for what it is, man, because it's not right on the fighter, man. Like Kiko Martinez last night put in an unbelievable effort coming forward, 34 years old. No one was really expecting him to win, but he came forward and he put in a fantastic effort, did enough to win, according to many. Do you know what I mean? I thought he did enough to win as well, if I'm being honest. But yeah, just looking at those scorecards, how demoralizing would it have been for him to see that after all the effort he put in? So yeah, I really hope that we kind of look into this and there's some sort of reform as to how the judges are scoring fights. And, I'd love to see judges get interviewed after a fight, or the referee get interviewed after a fight. I mean, it's not a common practice, but I've seen it done before. I mean, I remember when Zab Judah got knocked out by Costa Tszyu. And remember, Jay Nady was the referee in that fight, and Zab attacked the ref. But they did interview the referee after the fight. They actually refereed him, and he explained why he stopped the fight. And I think that is a good practice. I'd like to see that going forward in boxing, where they interview the referees or the judges or not. But they just get a free ride, man. They have these crazy scorecards, and they just get away with it. We don't get to hear anything, and then they're just nominated for the next fight, and then that's it. Do you know what I mean? I'd love to see that, but we're not going to see it. Let's be honest. We're not going to see it. Big up A. Obes in the chat here. He's put, I knew they would rob Martinez. Eddie said all that, but deep down he's happy Zelfa got another big fight. Yeah, he said a lot, Eddie Hearn, but deep down, Eddie knew he had to say that because he saw the outrage on Twitter. He saw the outrage, and he's going to be one step ahead. He's going to let it be known. I mean, I'm sure maybe he did think it or not, but he knew that we were outraged by it, by the way how that was scored. And he said what he said, but I think what really matters now is what action is taken. What are you going to do to try and stop this from happening on your watch? Because this is happening on your shows. Do you know what I mean? So it's all good talking about it, but what are you actually going to do about it? Are you going to speak to the British Boxing Board of Control? Are you going to what are you going to do? We'll wait and see. But yeah, I agree with you. I think that a lot of people on Twitter as well were saying that, midway through the fight, going towards the end of the fight, I was looking at some of the comments people were making, and they were saying yeah, I think that Martinez is going to get robbed. We know that Zelfa's going to get it. But yeah, Zelfa does get another big fight. But for me, I think you have to guide him carefully. And I'm a fan of Zelfa Barrett. I like Pat Barrett, his trainer, and his uncle. I'm a big fan of his. I like Lyndon Arthur, his cousin. I just like that whole setup that they've got there in Manchester. But if I'm being honest with Zelfa Barrett, man, I mean, he struggled in there last night. And for me, that was kind of Martinez was like the gatekeeper to really see if he's going to propel onto the next stage or not. And he struggled, man. So for me, that tells me he's not ready yet to jump in the next level. But be interesting to see where he goes next. Interesting to see what Josh Warrington does as well. Yeah, I mean, it was a great night of boxing, man. It was. And I wasn't too optimistic about the card last night because I thought that the two main events would be pretty dominant. I thought that Zelfa Barrett would win easily, and I thought that Josh Warrington would dispose of Maurizio Lara. But it just shows again why we love this sport, man, because literally anything can happen. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, fantastic night of boxing. And I'm going to wrap it up here, guys, because I'm not going to be on for too long. But I really do appreciate you guys coming in the comments. And for those of you that are regulars here, just know that, we'll be back on Thursday to talk about it a bit more. And yeah, for those of you that are new to the comment section or new to the video, click that like button, man. Subscribe to the channel and get involved. We jump on live, man, every Thursday and every Sunday. So I appreciate you all for being here. Have the good rest of the weekend. And I'll catch you all. Or let me go to one more comment, actually, from Conrad. He's put, off topic, but the Warrington performance makes me wonder if Fury will be ready to face AJ after 15, 16 months of inactivity. And it's funny you say that, Conrad, because I did a video about that probably a week ago, talking about Fury being inactive. So if you haven't seen it already, check that out. But I literally did say that could be an issue for Tyson Fury going in there against AJ. So great point that you've made there. I've touched on it in the video as well. But yeah, I'm going to wrap it up here, guys. Thank you all for tuning in. And I'll catch you on the next video next week. So tune in and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you.